Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Gateway to Britain webinar. We are very happy to welcome all of you and that there is a lot of interest in the webinar, and very happy to be able to present you today the innovative application that we're developing together with a lot of partners. Maybe to kick off, it's source of engagement. It's one-way communication today, for which our apologies. Of course, you will be able to ask questions. You can do that in the Q&A section in the Teams environment. And my colleagues, Nathan and Thibaut, they're moderators. They will already answer a lot of these questions live. But also after each section, we will create some pauses to take some live Q&A questions, or at least answer them live if it's a bit more complicated answer. What do we have for you today? Two main topics, digitization at Port of Antwerp-Bruges. We want to share with you some learnings we've had the past years. Basis two use cases, CPU, the certified pickup system, IRP, the inbound release platform, and then of course some lessons learned and how we will organize ourselves for the future, because digitization and ports becomes more and more important. This part will be brought by myself. And then, of course, the essence of today, the most important part, which my colleague Lars van Dijk will share with you or present to you, is the Gateway to Britain application. He will explain or do a short intro, explain the project, and of course then also show you what's being developed. For us, the main ambition is to get a feeling from you, from the market, to understand if there is indeed a need for that product, what the requirement should be, and if indeed there is a commitment from all parties involved. So first thing first, digitization at Port of Antwerp-Bruges. Maybe a bit of a boring slide or a very cliché slide from a crossroad, and I think everybody always thinks that they're on a crossroad, and for sure that is also true. But also from a digital perspective, at least I have that feeling that we're again on a crossroad. From the past learnings, from the launches of the previous systems and tools, it became very clear that ports also need to invest in digital infrastructure. And of course, that's not our core business so far. So far, we've always mainly invested in physical infrastructures, quay-walls, bridges, locks, roads, railways, etc. And that's what we can do well. From a digital perspective, we still are especially linked to supply chain processes. We're still in a learning curve, but it is an absolute must. And one of the main learnings is that we cannot do it alone. Clearly, in the VUCA world where we're in, a very volatile world, we have to be agile and we have to be adaptable, and you can only do that together with partners in collaboration. What I will present you, as mentioned, are two use cases. And the first use case is CPU certified pickup, which kicked off 4 years ago, and where we're today live with the system, and where most of our volumes are being pushed through that volume, through that tool, through that system. But more on that later. First of all, the CPU system started with this vision about safety within the port. One of the unfortunate developments that we more and more see is that ports are center for, or not center, but at least that there are a lot of criminal activities in ports. Think about drug trafficking, think about illegal imports, exports, etc. And since the attacks of 9/11, there is a very clear regulation, ISPS, linked to physical protection, physical fencing. But of course, a port is also a place of business. So it's not possible to make from ports fortresses. That's not desirable. It has to be a smooth operations, and operation and efficiency has to remain centrally in that view. So our ambition was, from a safety perspective, to create a digital net, a digital nervous system around that physical fence, and then maze by maze close down the gap, close the mazes in the web and make the port a more safe environment. That has been a push to make mandatory. And of course, together with the community, we opened up the discussion, and clearly that's not enough. We had, or we have to think along, and we need to create products, digital products that are not only about safety and security, but also create added value, create more efficiency, and then create a combined thing that makes ports a better place for commercial activities. And that was also the basis and the real launch of the certified pickup system and tool. Now, to briefly explain what is the certified pickup system, it is a system that makes the import of containers safer. The old process is all about PIN codes, and there the ship agent entering the port or guiding the vessel in the port sends a PIN code to the terminal and to the consignee, the first release party, who is owner of the cargo, and with that PIN code you can pick up the container. The PIN code is sent from the first release party probably to a forwarder, to a transport operator, etc., etc., etc. In the final stage, the PIN code is being sent to the driver, who will then take that PIN code, drive to the terminal, enter the PIN code at the gate, and then can pick up the container. Often with general mailboxes, a lot of parties involved, etc. So as you can feel, an unsafe process, a fraud-sensitive process, complex process, untransparent process, and not ideal. Our ambition was to combine both things, efficiency and safety. And to briefly explain what we've done, we've created a certified pickup backbone. And that's the yellow arrow that you see here on the slide, where every party connects to that backbone. So the ship agent does not send a PIN code anymore, but a release right to the consignee. The consignee can push that release right to the next party in the chain. And they can push it to a forwarder, again to another forwarder, to a transport operator, a truck operator, a barge operator, a rail operator, until it arrives at the final transporter operator, which or who will pick up the container at the terminal. That party will change the release right to a pickup right, and then link that for truck to a person based on biometric data, and for a barge and rail to a specific company, a company identity. That truck driver drives to the terminal, scans its fingerprint, and then will get the container. So that's from the safety perspective. Why did we create that? Because it creates an audit trail, which is very important, also for other governmental organizations, police departments, etc., so that they can also scan on some strange behaviors or strange patterns. On the other hand, it is also safe from a truck perspective, because we know really on identity base who will pick up the container. From an efficiency perspective, we've also introduced the light structure. You see it here, the red, the green, and the orange lights, where every party in the chain will also tell the transport operator or everybody in the chain whether the container is ready for pickup, yes or no. So the ship agent will create a green or a red light based on the commercial release. Is the invoice paid? Is the BL received, etc. So they can change it in a green or a red light. The terminal has a discharge light, and of course also has to make clear whether the container is discharged or not. Otherwise, it's not really useful to drive to the terminal if it's still on the vessel, but a very clear indication. Also, the terminal has the ability, from a terminal release perspective, to create a green, orange, or red light, and make it clear to the other parties in the chain whether the container can be picked up. Think about damages on a container, other reasons to block a container. So that's also a possibility. And then last but far from least, we have very we have a very close collaboration, or we had a very close collaboration linked to this project with customs, where also customs, the custom system CRM has been put into production live together with the terminals, together with the ship agents and all parties involved in the chain, and where it's now clear whether the goods are custom cleared, green light, there is a control, or not custom cleared, red light, or if there is a condition you can pick up and, for example, drive to the border inspection post for scanning, orange light. So there is a conditional pickup available for a specific terminal. As you can imagine, that transparency in the chain for Port of Antwerp-Bruges has been unseen and creates a lot of added value for all the parties involved. It makes that there are less quarrels about custom fines, etc., because no cargo will leave the terminal anymore without all customs formalities being done, but also there are less useless drives for truckers, barge operators, etc. More transparency, so more efficiency. Where are we today? We have around 18,000 users and 3,600 companies registered to the CPU platform, and on a daily basis, 2,500 containers picked up. So a huge rollout, which kicked off on January 15, and where we're almost at the last stage. The majority of the volumes are online, and the system is performant and working well. But what became very clear from this exercise or this project is that collaboration is key. I think, fairness and openness is that we underestimated the impact, the direct impact we had with this process on the supply chain. We really interfere in business processes, and we really need to have commitment to do so from all parties upfront. It is not anymore about launching a digital tool. It is more about change management and changing the way we work from a more reactive way to a very proactive way, because we have to do all the checks up front before we go to the terminal, before the container can be picked up. So as mentioned, collaboration, standardization, focus from all companies, from all parties involved, commitment from all these parties involved, and alignment on the processes are really essential. And that's really something you have to do upfront before we even start building and launch such a platform. So one of the major learnings is before we launch against such projects is that we define the scope very well. We have indeed that commitment from all parties involved. We do very proper functional analysis from the as-is to the to-be processes, and then only start building such a digital product, such a digital infrastructure, and roll it out together with all parties involved. Again, a special thanks for all parties involved in this project. On the right, you see some of the associations involved, but of course, there are a lot more companies that really have made it happen and created a very big push to get certified pickup live. So as you can see, a lot of learnings, something we take away also to the next use case. And the next use case I wanted to present is IRP, the inbound release platform. This project is in another phase. It's not rolled out. It's in the building phase. And already here, we introduced a lot of these learnings together with the community. It's very important. Collaboration is key here. And there is a high involvement between the different partners, being customs, the community, the way forward, how they organize themselves, the platforms, Nexport and RxC port, to really create a very proper platform working for all involved. But first, to briefly explain what is the inbound release platform. As you might know, European policy and legislation is changing. They've launched the UCC, the Union Custom Code program, focusing on three main priorities, and that's harmonization of data, that is standardization of the processes, and of course also create more efficiency improvement in the processes, and also digitize the different processes, mainly for declarants, because today there is still a lot of manual work, which is unnecessary, inefficient, and not how we should do it in the 21st century. But of course, such a program comes also with changes in legislation and equally important, changes in the IT landscape of customs. So customs in Belgium, but also the other countries in the European Union are changing their landscape, and we as a market have to adapt to these new requirements. So the inbound release platform created by Next Portway Forward, Port of Antwerp-Bruges, will focus on that part, as you see here in red, circled around, the part for the ship agent, for the terminal, and of course for the declarants to create one platform, one single truth, one view on all the data, and also the right formats and linkage between data to make the custom processes valid from a legal perspective. So, because that's maybe a bit vague, and I will not deep dive in the processes because that will take a lot of time and too much time. For sure, there are other alternatives to deep dive, and we would be happy to set up an additional webinar specifically about inbound release platform. But to briefly highlight, what does the inbound release platform do? The ship agent has to send a TSD to the PNTS custom system, and the inbound release platform can generate such message together with the ship agent. The terminal has to create a presentation notification to the PNTS system, but requires some of the data from the ship agent. So the terminal can send a discharge message to the IRP system, and then the IRP system will combine the data from the TSD and the discharge message to create a PN message. Customs also has confirmed that they will give feedback to the IRP platform about which cargo is being checked or has to be checked, has to be scanned, has to be controlled. So that will also be bundled on the IRP platform. Also, the customs will inform the IRP platform about the custom clearance of the goods. So also from that respect, everything can be bundled on the inbound release platform, creating transparency for the logistic service provider about the data that they required to do the custom clearance, but also about the data about the status of the goods. Are they custom cleared? Can we just pick them up from the terminal, or do we need some additional things to do in view of controls by customs? So very important, one single truth, the reuse of data, and of course, a very clear message to all the parties involved about the status of the goods. It is for all cargo flows that it's being developed. So for RoRo, liquid bulk, dry bulk, container business, ferry business, etc. So a very important part. And especially for that last one, we're working together with also Eric Seaport to put it into the market. Next week, we will send out for parties involved in Belgium the commercial offer towards for the ERP platform. And that brings me already to the final slide I have, at least, is next steps and how do we see the future. My apologies, it's not the nicest slide, but it's about the learnings and the content. And what we mainly have learned are a few things. First of all, before we launch a project and a product, we have to be clear about commitment, have to be clear about a business case that is, and have to be clear about financing. And to do so, we have to organize ourselves about that. And there are a lot of parties involved. We have the Port Authority, of course, itself, Port of Antwerp-Bruges, and there we have taken the step to really create a dedicated department to focus on the supply chain processes and understand the role that we as a Port Authority have to take in that digital infrastructure. The community, also from certified pickup and inbound release The inbound release platform also has organized, at least in Antwerp, has organized itself in a different way, in the way forward. And that creates more alignment, an easier way to talk. And of course, we have to do that together with all the port communities to see how can we take up the discussion in a structured way to understand what are the requirements and how to go forward. And of course, we need also some companies that can create the digital infrastructure, where we have today RXC port, Nextport, and Port of Antwerp-Bruges itself, and also have to see how to align that. And of course, that are the three main parties, so the community, the digital infrastructure, and the port authority, but we have to also involve other stakeholders like customs, FAVV, all parties that have an impact on the supply chain, also from a regulatory perspective, etc. Our ambition is to create a proper governance so we can evolve to a single agenda. And that single agenda has to consist out of two parts. First of all, what kind of products and what kind of digital infrastructure do we have to foresee? And one of these new products is, of course, the product Lars will present to you, the Gateway²Britain product. Is there indeed a requirement? What are the requirements exactly? What we will show is that what is needed in the market. What role do we have to play? Is there a business model, etc., etc. So we're very curious also from that perspective about your feedback to understand if we have to push it through on this single agenda. A second one is, of course, existing products. CPU certified pickup is launched, but of course not finished. What is the further ambition? How should the user interface evolve? Do we need additional functionalities? What is the collaboration with the inbound release platform, etc., etc. So also from that perspective, we need alignment, a good governance, and a single agenda to make sure that we do the right things, the proper things moving forward, and that whatever we build is useful for the community and creates a more safe and a more efficient, ports. I think that is the part I at least wanted to briefly explain and touch upon to sketch a bit a scene. So I think now it's a question towards the moderators. If there are already questions, we have to answer yes or no.
Yes, Michiel. So there's a question from Johnny. Have the Belgian customs authorities confirmed they will provide the release information immediately upon a goods line being written off of the temporary storage inventory?
Towards the IRPs, towards the inbound release platform, to my knowledge, yes, there is a confirmation that they will push the status immediately to the system so that we can also make it transparent. Yes.
Okay, thanks. That's it for the moment, Michiel.
Okay, perfect. Then I want to introduce my colleague Lars van Dijk, who will take up the second part of the presentation.
Thank you, Michiel, for doing the first part of this presentation. Let me just quickly share my screen and we can get started with the second part. All right, normally you should be able to see my screen. Thank you very much for tuning in to our webinar. In this second part, I want to touch up on the Gateway²Britain project. I want to paint the history of the project, indicate what we're working on, what the next steps are for the next few months. And then as a first real outing of what we are working on, we will show our demo publicly for the first time at the end of this webinar. So definitely stay tuned for that. And afterwards, we will end the session by answering all your questions. For the people that have tuned in a little bit after the start, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to write down your questions in the Q&A section right here in Teams, and then our moderators will pick it up at the end during the Q&A session. All right. For a brief introduction of myself, my name is Lars van Dijk. I'm a program manager for the Gateway²Britain project. I work for the Port of Antwerp-Bruges Port Authority. Normally, apart from the Gateway²Britain project, I'm active in our port community team within our digital and innovation department, which is our IT department. So I have an extensive knowledge on our port community systems that have been in existence for many years now, like eDesk, but I also collaborate on projects such as IRP and the certified release platform. And I also collaborate with our stakeholders in that market and our daughters that help digitalize the port community, such as Nextport and RxC Port. All right, with that formality settled, I'm not going to start with the project immediately. No, I'm going to start with talking about international trade and the real world challenges associated with that. As you all know, executing trade these days is much more about the barriers and the customs procedures you might encounter while doing that trade. However, in the not too distant part, at least it used to be more about really getting the cargo from A to B. We've seen that ships and their efficiencies and the economies of scale have grown tremendously, way beyond our dreams. And as you surely know, we now have huge super tankers that won't fit the biggest locks in the world. We have containerized loads of goods, and those containers sit together with over 24,000 containers on the very same ship. Unloading them goes partly automated in a very efficient manner. The rest of the supply chain is also constantly innovating and has innovated a lot. It has really changed from the days where we have workers manually picking up the goods in the hold of a ship and bringing them ashore. That has really changed a lot, and it has created the wealth we all know and enjoy today. However, should something happen to the supply chain, to those loads, and that's indicated in these pictures here, yeah, it would shoot the logistical world into a bit of a crisis, really. And everyone has to work overtime to adapt to the new situation. And that is often via a very laborious manual processes, lots of manual contact to contact everybody and make sure to limit the damage and the delays that have occurred. So the first picture here that some news outlets painted that as Brexit, and it was in the same time period. It is a picture of a runway filled up with trucks in the United Kingdom, but it was actually COVID and Brexit coming together to form a bit of a bigger crisis. I'm sure that a lot of people here in this call were affected by that and had to quickly adapt their processes and see how they could get the goods across. The second picture, surely known to you, is the ship, the Ever Given, that has struck one of the sides of the Suez Canal in Egypt, blocking one of the most important shipping lanes in the world, and blocking that for several days. That caused ships to have to transit around Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, adding several days to their journey. Actually, today, that is very much again in the news. The problem or the bottleneck is not in the Suez Canal, but it's around the Yemeni coast, where rebels are denying passage of ships, or at least making it very unsafe for them to pass, which is again creating a crisis in the shipping world. And well, let's hope that doesn't happen more often in the future, but that is a reality we need to be ready for. And again, when something like that happens, or a minor disruption, whatever it may be, we need to be able to quickly adapt, have efficient procedures and communication methods in order to adapt to the new situation. Of course, Brexit also has had real world consequences, and there has been an initial shock after the new customs procedures were reintroduced. This week, we're seeing still that 40 years after Brexit, that new changes have been introduced to the border operating model. So again, that's still very much the topic of today's goings. Well, we've seen that fortunately, at least in Flanders, trade due to Brexit hasn't been impacted as was feared. However, there are still undeniable physical and procedural changes that have happened to the trade between our countries. And we've seen that these have thrown up barriers that have impacted trade. And from the Flemish Gateway to Britain project, we aim to alleviate these barriers. And there is a special focus on SMEs, but larger companies as well, because we've seen that especially SMEs, well, the new barriers that and the new procedures that have risen up around that trade, well, for some countries, they've opted to halt trade because of these new barriers. It would not be worth it to be invested for them in knowing how to tackle these procedures. So that is something that we want to alleviate through the Gateway to Britain project. But also for larger organizations, we want to implement changes so that everyone can work smoothly together and that the effects are minimized. The end goal is that we see a big surge in trade between our countries via the Gateway to Britain project. All right. Well, Brexit has led to an EU initiative to alleviate the associated negative effects, and Gateway to Britain is one of these outcomes. The EU has launched the Brexit Adjustment Reserve, and we are part of that project. All right. Then let's delve into a bit of statistics regarding the trade between our countries. I don't know if the slide is that clear. It is in Dutch, so I'll explain it for the English-speaking participants of this webinar. In any case, the blue lines represent export from Flanders to the UK, and the orange bars indicate import to Flanders from the UK. So the first bars are in 2002, and it ends up all the way to 2022. So we see that there has always been more export to the UK than that there has been import. And just to make clear, these figures include all trade. So that includes services, it includes energy and goods being transited between our countries. We have a couple of arrows on the timeline here. The first yellow arrow is in 2016, and that was back when the referendum was called. And we see when we don't look at 2022 that was the biggest number of trades, the highest number of trade. And after the referendum, both import and export declined a bit. Brexit happened, of course, at the start of 2021, and we see a slight decline in export, but we see a slight increase in import as well. But the figures are clouded here, definitely in 2022, because we had some crises during that years. Of course, the COVID crisis happened, but also we had the energy crisis, and that explains the very high figures in 2022. But if focusing purely on trade, we will see that for some sectors it has declined, but for other sectors it has increased. So something has definitely changed. In any case, the feared numbers that trade would plummet, they have not materialized, fortunately. So you can definitely say that. We can also state that trade with the UK is rather multimodal. Of course, we have the very well-known ferries and ship connections between our countries, but also the very famous Channel Tunnel for rail and truck traffic. But also a very important part are pipeline and power cable connections. Pipeline important for transiting gas energy, which is why we have the major surge in import in 2022. But also air freight is playing a very important role in the trade between our countries. All right, then let's go to a bit of history of the Gateway to Britain project. As you see on the timeline, it started back in 2021. And we've done a couple of study phases, concepting phases, technical design phases up until the end of March 2023. After 2023, or after March 2023 rather, we started with phase 4 with the different partners in the project. It's just not just the Port of Antwerp-Bruges on this project. No, we're working with many stakeholders, many Flemish players, not limited to the Flemish Institute of Logistics, Flanders Investment and Trade, which is a government body from the Flemish government to promote trade with our region. Also the Flemish Chamber of Commerce, and also a lot of private players that have been interviewed, that have helped collaborate to mature our concepts and helped us get to the point where we are today. Today, we are in that phase 4, and that phase 4 is the building phase. We are creating, so we are done with studies. Now we're really creating tangible stuff for the market. So we are working on the data sharing platform as a Port of Antwerp-Bruges. The rest of this webinar will center around that. The Flemish Institute for Logistics has worked on a certification for logistical players to help SMEs, but also larger organizations to trade with the UK. I'll go in more detail on that in the next slide. After all our study phases, 3 pillars were conceptualized, and these 3 pillars are focusing on the main things that came out of our studies on what impacted trade and what is needed in order to alleviate the bottlenecks on this trade. I'll explain these 3 pillars now briefly. So the data sharing platform, that is what we are working on as Port of Antwerp-Bruges. This is a digital initiative to bring together all kinds of data in the supply chain. It should share data, share documents, share customs messages with all players, not just limited to the port area, but in the entire chain. So really from A to Z, basically transiting from the factory where the goods depart, through all the warehouses, terminals, shipping lines, transport operators, also in a multimodal fashion, up until basically the shelf in the supermarket in the UK, where the goods end up, or any other place if it's not the supermarket, but also on the retour. So it's a two-way platform that will be for both import and export. All right. What we also try to encompass is that all players within that chain, so not just players operating in the port. Now, every stakeholder should be connected by that platform, brought together, share data with each other, and work in a very efficient manner together. More on that later. The demo will also focus around the data sharing platform. Then we have the second pillar, and that is the physical service point. As I said, this focuses on SMEs and ensuring all logistical related services to them, all the formalities that they need to adhere to. Well, these service points, they can make sure that that is all done in a correct fashion. So a lot of logistical integrators have been certified via this system, and SMEs can call upon these service providers in order to get their goods across to the UK. It's only export oriented, and these logistical service providers, they will make sure that all formalities are taken care of by themselves or their subcontractors, and the SME just has to pay one very transparent price in order to get their goods across. There is a website on that, gateway2britain.be. Certainly visit it after the webinar. You can find more details there. You can also find which parties have been certified. In the future, more parties will also be certified by the Flemish Institute of Logistics. And we've seen a nice surge in trade already through that platform. The idea is also there that it gives a transparent trade lane to the SMEs that are calling upon it. Okay, and then the third and final pillar also centers around making trade more transparent, but then goes back to my first slide a bit. It's in that spirit, and that is tracking the physical location of the goods via existing Internet of Things technologies. There are very much technologies already on the market. They are available. There could be GPS trackers attached to your load to track where they are. It could be NFC or RFID tracking. It could be traditional barcodes or QR codes that are used to check the waypoints of where the goods are. In any case, that is not a new technology, but it is rather new to share that location data across the chain, really from A to Z, as I painted the picture before for the data sharing platform. Now, these three pillars, they are being worked on. Unfortunately, the third pillar, the transparent trade lane, has not been picked up yet, but we might revisit that in the future. In any case, there is an integration between the three pillars. It is not mandatory to use all the three pillars at the same time. No, you could only use pillar 2 or pillar 1 for your activities. But of course, integrated the pillars are very strong, and it is designed in that way. They all come together in the data sharing platform. So you can see the status of your physical service point via the data sharing platform, but also the physical location of your goods via the data sharing platform, and you can interact with all parties through that data sharing platform. All right, now this slide is a very busy slide. I'm not going to explain it in depth, and then we would sit here for the rest of the day, I'm sure. But just to paint a picture of the landscape that we are operating in, it's a very complex, difficult landscape, and it's different in every supply chain. I just wanted to give an idea of what the parties are involved on both sides of the channel, but also the systems that they use, which are involved also on both sides, and are different for all activities. Now, of course, some parties, they play multiple roles at the same times. It could even depend on the contract or the supply chain that they are operating within. They all have their own custom systems, or in some cases they use the same systems, or they are changed, adapted a bit to their way of working. So that is a very diverse landscape. And currently what we are seeing is that these systems are not integrated at all. They might have single points of contact with governmental systems of customs of their respective countries, but it will be limited to that. In some cases, we do have seen that links have been set up between big players in the logistical industry. But these links are often very pricey, and they cost some time before they are up and running. Also, there is a maintenance cost involved with that, which could be prohibitive. But having these links in place, it decreases the need for manual communication, which is still the backbone of the logistical working in this day and age. We see lots of emails, which might even be the most structured way of communicating, but we also see lots of phone calls where data is not stored, WhatsApp messages, text, who knows, even smoke signals somewhere. It's very diverse also, and that communication is not secured, it's not stored. It's often between persons instead of companies. So it might be very difficult to revisit what has been communicated afterwards. Actually, we have seen that some logistical players store emails after a shipment has been completed. They put it somewhere on a file server, so that they can revisit it later, but it's also only the emails, not phone calls, and still that's a manual process. I understand why they do it, and I found that a funny story, that they did that. It's a good procedure, but of course it's manual work, and in this day and age that shouldn't really be possible. So that's also something that we want to tackle in the platform. All right. So let's go into a bit more detail on what we are working on. Gateway to Britain for us is a big program. As said, we're only working on pillar 1, but we are cooperating with the other parties involved, working on the other pillars, and that are working on the governments surrounding all pillars. To be more concrete, we're working on a couple of projects. One is related to the inbound release platform, which are the status messages and release messages for trailers, trucks, containers, and other types of loads. They will be integrated with the new IRP system. The new IRP system is focusing on the new inbound custom systems that we launch in the middle of this year. And we, as a Gateway²Britain platform, can fetch these data, these release messages, and other informations from the IRP system and make that available in the Gateway²Britain system. We're not trying to replace an IRP system or any other system, but we just want to bring together all that data to create an unseen transparency and gather all these data in order to get a very interesting management view for the users involved. Okay, another project is the inspection management app. This focuses on the food chain. It is in cooperation with the Belgian food safety authorities, the FAVV. It is an application that focuses on these perishables. It combines all players, both governmental and the private players. It offers the opportunity to upload documents, upload information regarding checks, so that the cooperation between the food safety authorities and the private players can be automated through that application. And then the big one, of course, is a data sharing platform. After our study phases, we have determined a vision. We have determined a sort of mock-up and a data architecture of the platform, how it should operate. We have always gone from a very open concept. The idea is that everyone should be able to collaborate on this platform, collaborate in the way that they want, and integrate it with their systems in a very open and way where we don't make choices for the companies, but we allow a very broad range of possibilities, so everyone is also able to integrate with the platform in a very low effort manner. More on that later, of course, but there are also smaller initiatives under the umbrella of Pillar 1, such as improvement to existing systems like our eDesk application that will be improved upon. Okay, let's briefly look at the scope of the data sharing platform and the parties that will be involved that are foreseen to use that platform. We are focusing mainly on private parties, and that's all parties involved in getting goods from A to B, both in the physical movement and the services associated. We are not focusing on the public governmental organizations. Of course, customs food authorities, that they will be connected. We will be able to fetch customs statuses and represented in the platform, but it is not foreseen that the public parties will use the platform or be a participant in the platform at this time, with exception of the inspection management app for perishables, but that's really a separate thing. The port community systems that are in existence of today, we also want to connect those and represent their information into the platform. Parties that are not part of the scope are not directly linked in the operational activities in transport, and those are insurance companies, banks, fumigation, federal police and police services. They are not part at this time. Okay, then a bit of the timeline that we are working with. So back in June 2023, we started building a system. It is not yet the full-fledged data sharing platform that we have envisioned. That would be too early, and then we would really be building something big without testing the concept first in the market. So we are now building a pilot program, and that build will be completed already next month in March. And then we will start testing the system with a big number of pilot parties. We have a couple of supply chains with all service providers that have given their commitment to join the pilot and be active on both sides of the channel and see how they can share and collaborate through the platform. So we will validate our data architecture and data sharing principles, but also very important are security principles that the data owner can always choose who can see his data, who can collaborate with his data. It is very important that we can validate the proper operation and the proper alignment of all that during that pilot phase that will end in May. We'll have a couple of months to really delve into the details, see how companies can use it, and then afterward we will make a report. We will see how we can move to a version 1.0 and move on from there. I have to disappoint perhaps some parties and perhaps some questions popping up, but we cannot yet say what the real exact business case is, what the exact cost of operation of the platform will be, and that is not yet known. But that business case will be finalized in the last part of this year, and then we'll also see what is necessary to move to a version 1.0. The work that we are doing now on this pilot program, it will not just be for the pilot testing, it will not be in vain after that. No, we've designed it that we can build upon that, improve it, build the last few blocks in order to move that to that version 1.0. So we will have a house without an interior, but we did the windows and with functioning lights, but we just need to make it proper before it's really a viable product that can be used in the market in that version 1.0. All right, let's briefly look upon what the data is involved in this platform, what we're all trying to bring together, and in what fashion we will be doing that. So as I alluded to before, we want to bring custom status events, checks, controls, releases. We want to bring all that information into the platform, make it visible to the relevant parties of a shipment. We also want to combine that with location events that could be waypoints events from a terminal, from a warehouse, where you can see the status and the upcoming steps that goods need to take. But what we could also bring together there is physical location data from that pillar 3, being GPS trackers, RFID trackers, perhaps even Bluetooth trackers, all that, and combine that with the other statuses in the very same platform. We have an open policy there, is that everyone can integrate with the platform. So is existing GPS providers, they can call upon an ingestion API, send their data into the platform, and having it being available there. So you will not be forced to change any provider. No, everyone can freely integrate. What we also want to make available is information about the goods being transported themselves. In some cases, it is very important to know what you will be transporting so you can prepare accordingly. So there's information about the goods, financial data, insurance data, but also safety related data. What are the dangers of transporting the goods and all that, and supporting the proper administration of that. Okay. Very important to denounce, we will not be replacing any piece of software today in existence. Companies that have already made huge strides in their digital transformation, well, their work will not be in vain. Quite the contrary, in fact. The further organization has digitized themselves, well, the easier it will be to integrate with the platform and the lower effort it will be. We will build both a website and a full API connection, both being alternatives of themselves. So companies can choose how they will interact with the system, and it will be interesting for both smaller and bigger organizations to connect with the platform. Okay. Also important to say, companies can choose how to integrate. They can partly use the website, they could partly use API connection and grow their integration as time moves on and as they see value in the platform. Also, security is very important. We have the vision that the data owner, the party that uploads data into the platform, is at all times the owner of that data. So that party can choose which other parties he will choose that data, and it's really on a very granular level, on the level of a field. Basically, they can choose who will be able to see that. Of course, we will provide some automations there as well, so that parties can efficiently move along with that. Also very important to stress that we what the end goal here is that we want to make a management by exception concept a very big alerting and reporting component in this platform. Will allow for timely notifications when stuff is going wrong, and companies can set their own deadlines, their own notifications there. Also allow for third-party notifications being integrated into the platform, so that they can get an alert when their action is required, and resolve things in a timely manner with the minimum amount of delay possible. Because all data flows immediately through the platform, all that manual communication is eliminated. Of course, in some cases, manual communication is still necessary. And we wanted to eliminate those manual emails, manual phone calls, and other means of communication. And we've built a communication component into the platform as well. Important to stress, in the pilot program that we are building that will be finished next month, it is just a website component. The API is too soon, and it's not really necessary to test the principles of the data sharing. So it's just a website, but an expansion of to the version 1.0 would be having available those APIs. Now, how will we position the platform? As I said, the business case, it's not finalized. That's really a topic for the latter part of this year. But the vision is, we already have a vision how we can make this a viable product. And one of those is that the platform is broad, so it's not like a traditional port community system. And that's a big change for us as the Port of Antwerp-Bruges. In the past, we've built port community systems, systems that are focused on our port area. No, this will be much broader. As I said, it's from A to Z, not from A to B. So all those letters in between, all those stops, they are encapsulated into the platform as well. So if the transit of goods starts in a multimodal way, from Poland, travels by rail, then a bit by barge, a bit by truck, it ends up in the one of our ports, or it might even end up in the channel tunnel. Well, it can be still covered within this platform. So we have an open policy there as well. We will not be limiting goods to just the ones transiting through our ports. No, even if it doesn't touch the grounds of one of our ports, it can still be used a platform, and of course we will maximize integrations so that it has a value. We're also actively looking with other ports in the Flemish region and even beyond that, in order to see how we can collaborate together in building this platform. Good. Then the data architecture, it's also a very broad architecture. We are focusing on making sure that all players can integrate, but we know from experience and also from the research that we've done in the past that every company operates in a little different way. They all have their differences. And also they also have their own systems. We've devised an open architecture which relates to the data that offers a lot of freedom, so that every organization can integrate rather easily, so they don't have to change much on their end. And that can be provided through those APIs in the version 1.0. All right. As I said, the website and the API are alternatives of each other, but the company can also opt to use them both together for some functionalities. We're building that consortium of operators for the platform. The vision is that it shouldn't really be operated by us as a Port of Antwerp-Bruges once it's finished. It should go to a neutral entity, but it should stay within a neutral entity. So it should not be operated by one of the logistical players, because we need to maximize trust in the platform. And when one of the logistical players is operating the platform, well, they could have a commercial advantage by exploiting the platform, and we want to avoid that. So a neutral set of operators is very important. And then with regards to cost, we're not looking to make a profit with this platform. It should be cost neutral, so it should be operate for itself, should be able to maintain itself. But it's very important that it has a very strong support and data security structure. This will be a big platform, lots of data coming in it. So we need a strong support structure so that we can support users, but also make it very secure so we don't have any data leaks or cybersecurity events. It's very important that that is all tied down. And yeah, basically the big profit, of course, it will be a smoothly operating market. And once that market is operating smoothly, we will undoubtedly see an increase in trade, and then all parties will profit from that platform. Let's take a step back from Gateway²Britain, and let's go back to perhaps some lessons of physics that you had in the past in school, or you were interested in it and you saw it come across, and that are the classic network laws. Network laws, they describe the value of a network, often depending on the number of participants in a network. And the one pictured in the middle, Metcalfe's law, that is the most famous one, and it describes the value of the internet. It's basically an exponential function based on the number of parties involved. Well, once more parties join the network, the bigger its value grows, and that's in an exponential fashion. You also have Reed's law that is derived from Metcalfe's law. And that is a very interesting one because it describes subnetworks existing within the bigger network, enhancing its value of the total network even more. Sorry, and this is represented by these orange dotted lines. Those are the subnetworks here, but we can also see that happening in the Gateway²Britain network, and these subnetworks would be logistical chains that are integrated, communicating via the platform, and once they communicate via the platform, they can efficiently operate, even increasing its value even further. And then to go a bit further, we know that this is a pretty big and ambitious dream, but we want all stakeholders in the supply chain to connect, exchange data via the platform, alleviate the data sharing needs via the platform. And we've seen from the numerous interviews and the talks that we've had that all these organizations have one thing in common, and that is that they all need data, but they all also produce data. And every organization is data driven in the 21st century. So as they all have data to provide and to receive, having all this data in one central point, bringing all that data together can create a transparency that has never been seen before. And that can create a tremendous amount of value. We don't want to create yet another paper standard, and that's why we're also actually doing something. We're building something tangible that can be used and that will earn traction. That is really the vision of the Gateway²Britain platform, to bring together, create value via the platform. Now, We know that we have a long way ahead, of course. As I said, it's a pretty big and ambitious dream. And what is definitely important is a need for integration with the UK. Because we are Gateway²Britain, we're focusing on the UK. So we need to create transparency there as well, gather data from the UK side so that operators in the UK can also join and use this platform. It's very important to, at the very least, capture terminal events, capture customs events, but also for private players in that market to join the platform, use the same API that Flemish and Belgian companies are using, and provide that data and get data from the platform as well. Also on the Belgian side, we need to focus on a maximum amount of integration with existing pieces of software, so that we can see those in the platform as well. We have a number of port community systems already in existence. CPoint, RxCport, Nextport have important systems. Initiatives that Michiel already talked to you about, like certified pickup, the inbound release platform, but also the inspection management app that we're working on as part of this program. If we integrate those, integrate their data into the platform and link to these platforms when you need to change something, when you need to operate these platforms, and link directly to them, well, that will make management of these shipments very, very easy. It is very important to build a critical mass, referencing back to that network law slide. But we already have a very eager community. We've seen a lot of interest, a lot of parties that really want to start using it. One of the questions I get asked the most is, when will we have this? When will we be able to use this? Yeah, not immediately. I have to answer them, but we're getting closer and closer. Of course, we have a lot of ideas for a future build-up. In the future, we hope that we could even cross other borders as well with the platform, even within borders, that the platform could be used. And we've designed it in an open way already so that that would be possible in the future, in that open concept. All right. Now, why are we, as a port of Antwerp-Bruges, working on this initiative? And that really stems back to our values as a port. But we also have the technological building blocks already present. We've been working for decades on port community systems. We have the network of trusted networks that we are a part of, which is a network that can share data in a very secure way, creates firewall between organizations in order to safeguard that data. That is a backbone that we can use. But we also have another data sharing backbone, both via EDI messages and API connections, that processes hundreds of millions of messages per year, that we could take advantage of. We're also a community builder. That is within our role. Traditionally, it has been within the physical port area, but of course, it's ever more expanding, both on the level of international relations with other authorities, other countries, but also with organizations globally. And then also, it is very important that we strengthen the competitive position of Flanders, and our vision of a smart port. We want to be a smart port, and then having an idea where goods are, what the type of goods are transiting through the port. Well, that is very important, so we can make sure these flow as smoothly as possible into the future, and it could create possibilities in the future of looking at goods, enhancing safety, prioritizing certain goods, perhaps. Who knows? Everything will be possible in the future, using the Gateway²Britain as a backbone. Now, we've seen that other countries are also working on similar initiatives, but we can say with confidence that we are the first to really build a platform, and we will be the first to finish a platform. So we have a first mover advantage there. We're talking with these international stakeholders in order to integrate our platforms so we can align. And being one of the first to do this, it will allow us to have a good seat on the table on integrating this platform and create even more value on an international level by integrating all these. All right. So we've come to the final part of the webinar, and that will be a demo. So let me pop up the demo environment here on the screen. You should be able to see it now. And this is a clickable prototype that we have developed. This clickable prototype, it's not possible to insert new data in it, but all data, it's basically dummy data, but it will paint a picture. Hopefully it will make the things that I've said more concrete, and you will see what all the types of data are that we are bringing together in the platform. Of course, as any application starts in this day and age, we have a dashboard, and the dashboard is really meant to bring together all important aspects of a shipment, of your operations together in one point. So of course, we have an action dashboard where you see what your priorities are that are popping up that can be indicated through the platform. You have a couple of notifications. You have the messaging components that I talked through before. So that really should take your attention to the things that matter the most. Of course, via the platform, depending on your role, you can jump immediately to what is most important to you. And that requires a bit more explanation on the data architecture that we have developed. And that is an open architecture. So we've seen that every organization starts on a different level. They see a shipment as something different depending on their role. If you are a customs broker, you could look at your customs declaration, your MRNs, and want to manage them through that way. If you are a transporter, you will be interested in your containers, your transport units, and you will be looking to manage those. So depending on what you want to manage, you can go to either a trade view where you can see shipments and their associated MRNs, or you can go to the transport view where you will see your transport units. The trade view, we have developed an arbitrary number, a Gateway²Britain number, a Gateway²Britain shipment, and behind that Gateway²Britain shipment, you can have multiple MRN numbers and manage those from there. And linked to those MRNs, you can have many transport units, but it could also be the other way around, so that the same transport unit is linked to multiple MRNs. So all freedom is possible there. And those transport units, well, depending on what type of goods you are transporting, whether it's bulk or containerized cargo, whether it's pelletized or just parcels, it could all be encapsulated into the platform. We've also made sure that it will be possible to use a tree structure for your transport units. So you could start off with a trailer. On the trailer is a container. Within the trailer, you have multiple pallets. On those pallets are multiple boxes, and in those could be multiple parcels, or whatever it may be. All freedom is possible there as well. Okay, well, let's start off with the trade view and give an idea of all the data that is in the platform. As said, this is a prototype, and the pilot program that we are building will be a bit smaller version of this, and the version 1.0 that we are looking to build into the future. That might change a bit. This is our current vision for it, but of course it will change through the insight that we will get through our pilot testing phase. All right, so again, here on the shipment level, we bring together multiple transport units. You already see we have 3 here. We also have a couple of MRNs linked to this shipment. It all brings it together. We have a small dashboard here specifically for this shipment. So here is an action required for a certain transport unit container. In this case, you see the way that it will be traveling with all the waypoints here, which could really be a multimodal way. And you see that an action is required here because it has arrived late here through a delay somewhere, and you might need to take actions to alleviate that delay and make sure that it gets on time, or that it has new transport ways to its next waypoints. We'll also see what those next waypoints are. You'll be able to change the route that it will be taking, but in any case, the parties further down the line will know what to expect and when their goods will be arriving and when they will need to process them, and perhaps also with what priority they need to manage that. We have some information on the transport units as well. These are the timeline that I just described. So you have all the different waypoints here that your goods are transiting to. It could be different for all transport units. Here you could also go to that tree structure and manage that. And of course, that tree structure, well, it might change as the course of that transport materializes, and that could change between all these waypoints. Then on the customs parts, it's important to look at the customs related invoices and stemming from that, the items and all metadata related to that. So that will be able to be centralized into the platform as well. We have many data fields that can be uploaded here, both on the export level as on the import level, as those are not always the same. It's also possible to store documents here, so you can upload your documents into the platform and share those with other parties in your supply chain as well. Then we have information regarding the items that you are transporting. Currently, just metadata around these items themselves, but what we could also encapsulate is safety-related data and other information regarding those goods, so they can be transported in a safe way. And then, of course, we have information around the MRNs, the customs declarations, both on an import and an export level, because a movement, it always knows the both sides. It's both an import and an export at the same time, and it's very rare that you can manage both, or at least look at their status in the same platform. So we want to bring that together, and we have basic information regarding this MRN and the administrative status. You'll see what has been confirmed by customs, what has been sent already to customs, what might have been denied and why, and you can take action accordingly if that is required. And we want to have this both for the export level and on the import level. On the export level, from Belgium to the UK, we already have a connection set up for the pilot program with the eDesk application that we use within our port area. It will serve as a proof of concept in our pilot testing phase to see how we can get this administrative status integrated into the platform. But the vision in the future is that this data will come for all countries involved using the platform. Now, also important to denote, this data can come from multiple sources, whether it be commercial customs declaration software or the customs organizations of the respective countries. The good thing is that we always have an alternative for data, also location-based data. So not all parties need to join the platform in order to still create a value out of the platform. No, that will depend if multiple parties or a couple of parties are connected. You still have a tremendous value from the data that they provide and from the open sources that we can connect to the platform. Okay, then we have a generic section for documents as well. So documents that have not yet found their place in any of the other tabs that I talked about can find their place here into the platform as well. They can be uploaded and shared with certain parties. We have a contact section as well. In this contact section, you can immediately contact different stakeholders involved specifically with that shipment. It's on the shipment level. You can contact them, talk about the shipment, and you can immediately speak to the company involved, not really to a person. A company can decide that themselves. They can set who is following a shipment, yes or no, and they will get notifications of communication and events happening to that shipment. So it's very easy. No communication gets lost when somebody gets sick or leaves a company. No, it's all in the platform, and other people can pick up where somebody else left off. The communication functionality that we have built here, it's a bit of a WhatsApp chat-like functionality that is possible there. Of course, we hope that the communication is a very professional that will flow through there, but it's up to the parties themselves. As long as it's smooth and fast and easy communication, and all communication will be safeguarded into the platform so it can be easily revisited later on. Group messages to multiple organizations is also possible. Should a calamity occur, that you can easily see who can help and assist in order to get a shipment from A to Z. All right, we also have an authorization tab, but that is not yet ready for prime time. You can choose there who can see your data, who the other parties in the chain are, and make sure that your data is shared in a secure manner, and also that your commercial secrets are safeguarded, which is very important. Then let's move to the second view, and that is the transport view. As I said before, this is more interesting for parties transporting the goods physically, as they can see the units that they are transporting and immediately jump to those, see all information associated with that. So here we have a couple of container numbers. I can open one, I can see the status, where is it, what are the planned times, what are possible delays. I have the same tabs here, so I won't go through them all again. But you have the same information, the same data that is associated then specifically to that container, and you can also manage it based on that. We also have documents, we have a contact section, all associated there. Then we have a generic conversation tab as well, where you can see all conversations that are ongoing. A notifications management screen, but it's also not yet ready for prime time. We want to have a Power BI-like environment. We have basic statistics and notifications that can be used as a management view, but again, the possibilities are also there via API to build your own statistics, build in your own reporting tools, make them connected to the Gateway²Britain platform, and bring your own notifications based on all that data. So again, that is part of the open concept. So again, this was the demo. I just touched the top of the iceberg, of course, but I hope it has painted a good picture of what we're working on, what the Gateway²Britain concept is, and what the pilot phase is. The pilot, again, it's a bit more limited version of this platform. And then afterwards, we will see how we can build a consortium, whether there's interest in the market, and whether we are able to build something viable from this platform. And we hope to build this after the pilot phase, and we will, of course, make it known to the market. All right, thank you for tuning in. We now have the option for a Q&A session. So please let me know what the questions are. If you have any questions left, please quickly type them in the Q&A section. And now I'm open to all questions.
Yes, we can start with a question for you, Lars. Comes from our HMRC colleagues. So,
Mhm.
what business process and technical specifications do you share with other countries that are developing single windows to ensure alignment and successful interoperability?
Okay, thank you for that question. It is a very big and broad question. In any case, we're open to any collaboration. We are ready to share all of the insights that we have gained in the past and see how we can make both initiatives stronger. So especially to HMRC, we're open to collaborate. So definitely reach out. I know that we already have some calls and structures in place. To see how we can collaborate. So yeah, we're open to share our insights, our data architecture, and see how we can collaborate.
Maybe next question from Johnny Van Torre. Have Belgian custom authorities confirmed they will provide the release information, cleared status, immediately upon a goods line being written off the temporary storage inventory? Up until recently, the technical feedback was they would not do this.
I think we answered that earlier, Nathan,
Yes.
and to my knowledge, inbound release per platform will indeed have that feedback immediately. Of course, always within the technical capabilities and possibilities of both customs and IRP platform.
Yeah.
But that's the essence indeed. So one single truth, one platform, one data warehouse, so to say.
Yes. Then maybe also for Michiel and Lars. So, how did you start the collaboration process? So, you both talked about collaboration and gathering all the parties together, getting the
Mhm,
same mindsets. Can you
mhm.
elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, will you tackle this question or will I tackle it, Michiel?
Um, Go ahead. Maybe you for Gateway²Britain and I can tackle it for the other ones.
All right. Yeah. So again, yeah, very broad question, and that centers within the port community and the port community building that we need to do as a port authority, specifically within Gateway²Britain. As this project started back in 2021, a couple of partners aligned, both in the private market, but also the Flemish Institute of Logistics, Flanders Investment and Trade, the Flemish Chamber of Commerce, Vlaio. They all came together in order to create a vision surrounding that. And we worked together there. And basically, as the phases progressed, we've made collaborations with a lot of organizations, and all those collaborations are still active. We've gotten a lot of very interesting insights from that. And in the pilot phase, we'll also be bringing that all to fruition. So we have many dozens of private companies that will join us in this pilot phase. It's quite multimodal as well. So it's not just ferry traffic through the Port of Antwerp. It's also some traffic going via the Channel Tunnel, via air. We hope to also get a flow via the Port of Ghent. So again, very open, broad community. We're talking with every party that is interested in open in collaborating. As we know, referencing back to that network law, the more parties that are connected, the bigger the value is and the more relevant the platform will be.
And from a CPU IRP perspective, one answer: workshops, workshops, workshops. And that's maybe too easy to say, but it has been the basis on all levels with all main stakeholders. We've organized a tremendous number of workshops. We did it ourselves for CPU. For IRP, it is mainly the private community who has so far triggered it. And there the focus has been really on business requirements and then technical requirements as a separate track. So we did split it up, both of them, now resulting in building a product. So it is really stakeholder management for all levels, operational wise and technical wise, and of course also linked to customs. We have weekly meetings, etc. So that's how we try to cope with it. And the most important part is for us, the at least in the Antwerp community, the community has organized itself in the way forward with its own governance, making the discussion easier and with clear focal points. Are there other questions?
Yes, there's another question in the chat. It will be one for you, Lars. So Incoterms are essential in defining the responsibilities of parties involved in international trades. So defining the division of obligations, costs, and risks between seller and buyer. How does the system, Gateway²Britain, handle this?
All right. Yeah. So currently, Incoterms are not really defined into the systems. The roles and responsibilities are not really quite defined that way. Could be defined into the future. It could be something that will be indicated in the pilot phase as being crucial to take up into the version 1.0. Currently, it's modeled after bringing together all the parties into that platform, giving them all the visibility, and not really defining a role for them per se, and defining on what part of the supply chain they have a responsibility to tackle. Of course, the platform, it will give a good insight in status, so who has done what at what time. So you have a bit of an audit trail there, also an audit trail on how fast you get clearance for your goods, etc. So you have that. But yeah, interesting question. I think we should definitely take that up into the pilot phase and see whether there are any needs to bring that into the platform as well. Thank you.
Okay, the rest of the questions have been tackled in the chat. So yeah, that has been covered.
All right, then thank you very much for tuning in today. We were thrilled to have this audience here today. If you want to stay up to date with the Gateway²Britain initiative, we definitely follow the website gateway2britain.be. Any updates will be posted there. Also on the socials of Port of Antwerp-Bruges, so definitely follow that. Thank you again for tuning in. We will be sending an email with the slides, the recording, and also a very short questionnaire, and from that point on you can engage with us should you have any questions or ideas in how we can further strengthen the platform. This will be the final mail that we will be sending you unless you have signed up for other emails and newsletters with the Port of Antwerp-Bruges. So definitely stay in touch if you want to stay up to date. Thank you very much for tuning in today, and I wish you a nice rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.